Hi, this is May.
And I'm Joy.
Welcome to the QWERTY Writing Life Podcast, where we have candid chats about our creative lives.
May and I are friends, writers, and creatives who want to share our endeavors out loud.
On this podcast, we're here to encourage each other, and you too,
and share tools we've discovered or made up.
So you can follow your passions with a little support. So grab your tea.
Or your coffee.
And let's get started.
Fun is good.
Okay, so we're going to get into our creative weeks, huh?
Yeah. Okay, so tell me about yours. What have you done?
I wrote poetry this week. Yay!
That's so exciting. I love when you write poetry.
I do too. It makes me happy. You kind of see, I think it's written all over my face, so I like to do that.
You should share some of your poetry. You may not want to, but I put you on the spot. Her poetry is so good. And
do you mean like today, or like in an episode in the future?
Both. Both and either or.
Ooh, yeah, you sure did put me on
I really did.
Okay. I have a short one.
Okay.
I have a short one that I wrote.
Yay, I'm so excited.
This week, and it is called a micro memoir. So I'll go ahead and do that one. It's a random line micro memoir, so we'll just go from there.
I love it.
I was born in a hospital that sang over a river. I am told that I'm heavy-handed, but some things can't be done with grace. I love to whisper lines from a midsummer night's dream in my room, standing over my dresser, so if anyone walked in, I could pretend I was organizing laundry. I've held a cow's tongue in my hand and eaten it. I've seen death while I grew life within me. I remember what it felt like to kiss my spouse before I knew he could be mine. I have heard the buzz of impossible things like a swarm of bumblebees. I used to question my worth. I still do. I've learned that too much sun can cause cancer, and actions have consequences, even after forgiveness. I remember how it felt to be broken and be pieced together again, somehow stronger than before.
I love it. Thank you for sharing. That makes me happy.
I'm so glad you're happy. Thank you for putting me on the spot. I will get you back.
I know you will. I'm going to regret that, aren't I?
Oh, so there's that. So now I'm all pink, and you need to tell us about your creative week.
I can do that. I actually had something really cool happen this last week. I went to my local writers group, and I met a lady. Her name is Kim House Zavia, and I hope I'm pronouncing the last name right. I'll have to find out for sure next time I see her. But she lives nearby, about an hour away, and she is an artist, and she is an incredible artist. She's taught art for many years, and her paintings are just lovely. They really are. And she just came out with a new book, and I'm going to read it so that I don't mess up the title. It's called Just Paint It Ain't, which I just love that. That's adorable. And then her little subtitle is Demystifying the Complex Marriage of Artists and Their Viewers. And so she spoke to us about, and she has kind of like this circle thing. You'll have to get her book to get all the details. But it's kind of a circle that she uses to show the relationship between the artist and the viewer. And it works perfectly for writers as well, the relationship between writers and their readers. And so as she was talking to us about her little circle and everything, she was able to tie it all back in to writers and readers. And it was just so cool to listen to her talk. She was just so precious and super sweet, and she listens to our podcast, which is super cool.
Does she really?
Yes. So I was, I know, and I was telling May right before we got started that it would be really cool. Maybe we could have her on here one day and
absolutely
talk to her more about this, because I loved everything that she said. It made so much sense. KimHouseZavia.com.
And we'll put that information in the show notes too. Excellent. So our topic today is actually kind of a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking about things that we were told whenever we had started our writing journey that were considered rules of writing, and we discovered along our path that these rules were meant to be broken. So we're going to be rebels today and
I'm all about
talk
that.
about creative rules that you can break and not feel bad about it, and you can be a rebel writer.
Woohoo! I like it.
Just as a little introduction to the idea, something that Joy and I learned very, very well along the path of our writing careers, that the rules that we've been reading about and we've been told, they're not steadfast. And they're not steadfast because creativity is so personal and so individualized that one person's creative rule is not going to necessarily be your rule. It's not going to necessarily work for you. But what we do think is that each rule or anything that you read, if somebody says, hey, this works for me, it is something that can inspire you to find your own process. So definitely listen to them. Definitely try to apply it to your life. But if it doesn't work out perfectly for you, particularly in your position and where you are right now in your creative journey, then modify it to something that does work for you. Throw out the bad, keep the good, switch some things around, combine some rules, really make a ruckus out of this stuff, and personalize it, individualize it for you. So our first rule we're going to break. Joy's going to tell us.
Okay, so first of all, and I know you have all heard this, you have to write every single day. Well, guess what? No. If that is a rule, then I'm out, guys, because it doesn't happen every day. It just doesn't. Now, the thing is, you do need to have some sort of consistency, and there is value in trying to set times for yourself, scheduled times that you know that you are going to be writing, and things like that, so that it can kind of get your right brain into a habit. So, no, you don't have to write every single day. No, you don't have to write for, hours at a time, but you should have some sort of consistency going on, and whatever that is for you is probably going to look different than, us.
And a lot of us, too, have some major responsibilities that take a lot of time. So it's okay if you only have 10 minutes here. And if you can only do 10 minutes 3 times a week, that's okay. You should not feel bad about that as long as you are planning and if you are taking advantage of the time that you have. Mm-hmm. That's the big deal, whether it's every day or not.
Right. And I think, and this is where it comes into play what you were saying in the beginning about how every person is different. And you have to find out what your personal thing is. It could be for some of our listeners that they do need the everyday thing, and that needs to be a rule for them. Because I know with some people, like, you've got to have this everyday, okay, my butt is going to be in the chair from 1 to 2 or whatever it is. Like, you have to have the daily consistency in order to keep going. And so that could very well be a rule that you need to have for you. But we're saying that it doesn't have to be a rule for everyone. So.
And I don't want there to be any guilt associated with the fact that you don't.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's really my point there. I have actually read of a particular author that I truly admire where she had a job, she had a family, and she could only carve out 2 hours a week. But in 2 hours a week, she finished her first draft of her first novel in like 4 months. Because in the time that she wasn't writing, she was thinking about the structure and the plot and the characters and developing all of that stuff in her mind. And then so when she sat down to write for those 2 hours a week, she was able to write clearly and to use that time effectively.
That's awesome.
So yeah, just a plan. Just have a plan.
Oh.
And be honest about your time. Okay, well, that's not all I have to say.
Oh no.
Just be honest about your time that we really want to break is that you have to wait for inspiration. And that is so untrue. In fact, if you wait for inspiration, you most likely will never, ever finish your book.
You're going to be watching the moss grow.
So here's the deal about inspiration. Inspiration comes from your right brain. It's like a muscle. So the more you interact with your right brain, the stronger it gets, and the more you are able to create inspiration, basically, for yourself. So yes, there are times when you will be inspired, and boy, do I hope you have a notebook or a pen or a phone or whatever you need in order to write down that inspiration. And those are moments that are treasured by every creative. Mm-hmm. However, if you're going to do this for a career, if you're going to write in order to live, you have to make your own inspiration. You have to be your inspiration, and you have to exercise your muscles, your right brain. You have to engage your right brain. You have to dive into the creative world before you're inspired, and you have to do it quite a bit before you're inspired. And at that point in time, if you've got your plan and you're exercising this muscle, whenever it's time for you to sit down and write, I really feel like you're going to have a lot less writer's block. You're going to have a lot less self-doubt. You're going to have a lot less imposter syndrome and a lot more confidence to really complete projects.
Yeah. Well
what say you, Joy?
I agree. I like it. That's what I say. All right. So, another thing is, and this kind of gets into, this might be us trying to make up excuses. Okay, that's really what this one comes down to. But you might say, well, I have to have my, whatever tools I use. If you use Word and Microsoft Word is not working for you that day for whatever reason, or I have to have Scrivener, or I have to have Evernote, or, well, I don't have my fancy pen, or I ran out of ink and I haven't ordered more. I mean, whatever it is, I think that this kind of comes into the excuses part of it, okay? All of this stuff is great.
You're stepping on some toes, Joy.
I'm stepping on my own toes. I am so particular about where's my pen. I have my special pen. We're going to talk about pens. Okay. We're going to talk about the fancy pen. Okay, you see this fancy pen right here? Yes.
If you are not on YouTube, you should know that Joy is holding a red fountain pen, and it's super fancy.
It is super fancy. It is my editing and revising pen, okay? And I have to have this, and if I don't, I'm talking to myself right now. So don't freak out when you don't have your pen. You still have to edit or write or whatever the case may be, okay? So when you have the time and you are going to sit down and you are going to write or edit or whatever part of the process you're in at the time, you can't use that as an excuse, okay? Find whatever tools are at hand, and this red pen will, I guess, do if I don't have my fancy one.
Our next rule is, if you don't have the talent naturally, you should pick something else. I don't think that's true. So I'm going to be a rebel and say, you really need to have a desire and a perseverance to want to learn. Most likely, if you have a smidgen of talent, then it's something that you want to maybe cultivate. That would be enough in order to start learning. And I think that's the big thing, is that you can't be afraid of practice. You can't be afraid of learning. You can't be afraid of being taught. Those are things that are so important. And I think sometimes, too, there are some really talented people out there who maybe are afraid of those things, and so they can never get past what they are right now. And the people who become super excellent at their craft and at their creative endeavor generally have a willingness to learn and know that there's always something more to be learned, even when they feel like they're at their peak. Yeah. So if you feel like, and I'm going to just quote Joy on this one, if you feel like you can't draw and the only thing that you can draw are stick figures, I've heard you say it before.
Yes.
If you truly have a desire to learn how to draw an anatomically correct person, then All you need is a willingness to practice and a willingness to learn.
There we go.
And that's what I have to say about that rule.
There you go. Boom. You schooled that one. All right, so kind of piggybacking a little bit off of that, we've heard this before. You have to have an MFA. You have to have taken English courses at the college level. You have to frequently take writing courses. You have to have a mentor. All of these things. And while those things are great and wonderful, they're not a requirement to be a writer. You can still be a writer. It goes exactly along with what May was just saying. If you have the desire to learn and you have the motivation to get there, you have the determination to improve yourself, then you're going to be just fine. And then also another thing is, people, and I see this more and more often. It seems like every week I see someone else in a writers group that I'm in who maybe they've actually had a full career in some other profession, and now they're just coming into writing. And a lot of times these are professions that are completely unrelated. I mean, we're talking lawyers, which I know they have writing and the use of words, but it still is kind of unrelated, or even science, math, things like that, and they're coming into writing. If you want to, then hey, you can do this.
You don't have to have a college education. You don't have to be a particular thing. You don't even have to have a computer, because libraries are free and they have computers and you can do the research there. Joy and I are definitely pro libraries. Just going to throw that out there.
Absolutely.
Okay, so our next rule is going to be you have to start young, or you're too young to start. So there's actually two sides to this. There have been people out there who have been told, like literally told, that they are too young to start writing. And that is so untrue. And then there have been a lot of people who are adults who think that they didn't start when they were 5 years old, and so they have no chance to become an author. And that's untrue as well. Please don't ever discourage a child from doing something creatively. Don't stifle that creativity, please, because that could follow them throughout their entire life. And I have a feeling that there might be some listeners out there right now who are thinking of particular moments so they can remember the sight and the sound and the smell of the memory where they were discouraged from doing something creative at a young age. And that's probably why you're an adult now trying to figure things out. So that's what I have to say about that. Do you have anything to say about that? Oh, yes. Tell the age-appropriate thing.
The age-appropriate thing. Oh, my Taylor Swift thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So the thing that I like about Taylor Swift is she got her start young, like a lot of other artists of varying genres that happened to hit around the same time. I feel like there was quite a few around that age at the time, and most of the others were singing about things that were very much above their age level, and Taylor's songs were always very appropriate to her age. So when she was a teenager, she was singing about love, and she was singing about broken hearts, but she was singing about them as a teenager would and should experience those things. And so I always appreciated that about her. And so I think that is important for young people who are wanting to write. Well, let me put it this way, and this could actually go for anybody. If you get started in some sort of writing project and you just keep feeling stuck and you keep feeling like you're hitting walls, maybe there's a reason that you keep hitting those walls, and that reason could be that maybe you're not ready to write this yet, or you haven't quite figured out what your story is. And I think that sometimes can apply if a person's too young to write the story they're trying to write at that time.
So this brings us to the second part of this rule, that you are too old to be an author. You can't teach an old dog new tricks kind of situation. And that is not true either. Like, that is so untrue. We are all malleable. We are all able to be molded and learn new things, and our brain, it's still as long as it can think, it is still able to learn. You are not too old to try something new. And if it turns into a career, then great. And if it doesn't, you learned that thing, and you should be proud of learning that thing. So, I personally was not an avid reader as a child. I didn't get back into reading for entertainment until 2009. I was around 25. And it was about that time that I decided I wanted to help mold people's emotions. I wanted to provide a world for people to escape to if they wanted to, or maybe they just wanted to read. And also I wanted to lose myself in my own worlds. And those were my three purposes for deciding to start writing. And that's when I started learning about the craft. That was when I started reading extensively for entertainment, but also as like textbooks. I was one of those people who might have been considered too old to start something new. And I'm so thankful that I didn't let that thought consume me, because it was there. I mean, it was totally there. And it was something that I definitely was thinking about every time things got hard. So let me encourage you to break that rule and be a rebel and bust up against it and be like, you can't control me, rule.
I'm not too old. I'm not too young.
Not too old.
I'm just right.
That's right. Wherever you are, it's a mental state. It's not an age. It's not a physical age. It's a mental state where you need to be to decide if this creative endeavor is your thing.
Our last one that we're going to break tonight is write what you know. Okay, we've all heard this a million times. Write what you know. But something that I've discovered is sometimes you have to write about what you don't know first to kind of figure out what you do know, or how.
Explain that, please.
I know. I'm like, it makes sense in my brain, and then I start to say it, and then I'm like, oh, that's just not making any sense. Okay, so, for example, maybe you have a story within you, and it's something that's personal. It's something that you've experienced in some sort of way. It may not necessarily be, you as the character per se, but it may be like an emotional something that you've been through, but you don't really know how to write that. Sometimes if we dive into something like fantasy or some other sort of fiction or some other sort of writing, and we really pour ourselves into that, it's through writing about these things that we don't know about, that maybe we're making up completely, that we start to understand and figure out ways to tell that other story that we do know. So that was kind of my take on it when I first thought about the write what you know. And then just as a personal note, I know this one really bugged me when I was first trying to push toward actually writing. And I kept hearing this, write what you know, you gotta write what you know, write what you know. I thought, okay, well, I am a stay-at-home mom with itty-bitty babies, and what I know right now is screaming and diapers and cleaning and cooking. And so I was like, write what I know, really? You really want me to write that? Because that's just not interesting. And so I started writing about like a mom, and it just wasn't coming out well. It was horrible, and it was not going anywhere at that time. But I needed to dive into other things. I needed to learn more about myself. I needed to learn more about writing. I needed to learn more about other things before, and maybe one day I will write about a mom. I don't know. But the point is, I think sometimes we get stuck in that write what you know. And then when I said that to you, you had a really great way of looking at that it's not, sometimes we focus on the tangible things in the write what you know. So explain that.
I definitely think that this is taken super literally, and the only thing that we dive into is the surface level of what we know. So you were a stay-at-home mom. You cooked, you cleaned, You took care of babies. Sometimes they screamed and you didn't want them to. Those are the surface level things of write what you know. But Joy, you're so much more than that. We as individuals are so much more than that. We're more than, I sat in a cubicle for 11 years. If I wrote what I knew on the surface level, like, that's not interesting. That's super boring, right? Yeah. So what I think whoever coined this write what you know rule, what I think is what they meant is not necessarily write what you know on the surface, like on your professional level, but write what you know emotionally. So what are some things that I've gone through that could be a universal emotion? So repression of emotions, grief, happiness, joy, frustration, anger. These are things that we know because we're human beings. Okay. Right. So, and these are things that we can write in great detail and with raw honesty. Creativity makes you dive deep. Write what you know is not about write what your profession is. Yeah. It's about write who you are and the things that you've experienced.
I actually have a great example.
You have a great example?
Yes.
You do yours.
Okay. It's not me. It's a friend of ours. This is, I know, that's what I was digging around for. Okay. I actually thought about this as I was talking about the mom thing. So our friend, Autumn Lindsay, is the co-founder of Writer Moms, Inc., and she is a super amazing and supportive friend. Okay, so her debut novel, Remaining Eileen, just came out, and this book is about a mom, okay, but on a whole other level. And she really kind of takes the emotions of motherhood and she puts them into this women's fiction / paranormal, because there's vampire stuff going on in here. And she really brings it in to this story, which is so engaging and such a really good story. I highly recommend it. But she really did this well. She took what she knew. She took the challenges and the emotional aspects of being a mom, and she put that into this fiction story. So, boom, Autumn gave us our example.
That is what good authors do, is connect to those things that are real and put them into fictional settings and sometimes fantastical settings, which makes a really good book. But C.S. Lewis, thank you. There are so many ways that you can interpret this, but I hope that you interpret this in a way that will guide you to dig deeper into yourself and see what you actually do know about yourself that you can bring out into your writing and into your creative endeavor.
Absolutely. And I think one other thing on that is research these things. And I think that that's a big part of it too. Because you know what? If we all wrote only things that we've actually physically experienced in our lifetime, then we're going to be kind of limited. So yes, you're going to write about things that you've never experienced. I mean, my main character went to war, okay? I haven't done that, okay? But I know some amazing folks who have, and I talked to them, and I got, firsthand experience from them. And, I've read things, I've researched, all of these different things. And I think that that's another part of it. You can write what you know by doing the research that you need to know it. So
exactly.
Yeah,
and you can also take the things that you don't know that you are curious about and maybe want to put into a creative endeavor and daggone learn it. Okay?
Exactly.
You can, and not just in a research sense, but an actual hands-on sense. So Joy did a story where
I
did. you were writing about somebody who jumped out of stinking planes. And you jumped out of a stinking plane, which is ridiculous. Why would you do that?
Oh, it was so wonderful. I would not do it today, but I was brave then.
I have some major
fear of heights,
problems with jumping out of perfectly good airplanes. But, you do you. This is an opportunity to do something crazy that you've never done before. So you can also take things that you don't know and experience them, and they become things that you know.
Yeah.
So.
And that might even be more fun because then you have the organic experience of going through that for the first time, and it's fresh in your mind as you're thinking about writing about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah.
Absolutely. So I did not set a timer today.
I was wondering.
So ding, 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 ding. It's time for the QWERTY Challenge. Joy, tell us what the QWERTY Challenge is.
Okay, so this week's QWERTY Challenge is there another creativity rule, or whatever you want to call these, that you've clung to that maybe is something that's kind of held you back? Figure out what that is and go ahead and rebel against it.
Okay? To break it.
Yeah, exactly. And then tell us about it. We want to hear about this because we want to hear about, some other things that we haven't thought of on this list. We know that there are a lot of others. So this week, break out of that mold that you think that you have to fit into, and then tell us about that. Let us know about it.
We would love to know a little bit more about you. So
absolutely.
Do that and have a great week.
Have a great week. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening until the end.
Seriously, you're a trooper.
Do you think QWERTY Writing Life is the bomb?
May, you just said the bomb.
Don't you censor me.
If you think QWERTY Writing Life rocks ice for real,
oh my word,
please rate, review, and share us with others.
If you have questions about this week's episode or want to start a conversation, you can reach us by visiting QWERTYWritingLife.podbean.com.
We'll be back next week with more candid chats for you.